What's up, Hero Squad? It's 5 Questions with the Beast, and today we're sitting down with Dan Panosian for the very first episode. I had such a great time interviewing Dan Panosian. He is such a great guy. We talked everything about how we got into comic books, his comic book series, and the original Drink and Draw show. But before we get into the interview, hit the subscribe, hit the like, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any more of these awesome interviews that are coming up. Now let's get 5 questions in Dan Panosian. All right, so last week, Conor McGregor had his fight against Dustin Poirier, and it didn't go too well for him. Now, knowing that you're into fighting yourself, let's say you had to get into the octagon with another fellow comic book artist, Ron Garney, who is a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Can you tell me who's walking out of the octagon alive?
Oh, I don't know. Ron Garney's like a black belt jiu-jitsu guy, and he's got his own jiu-jitsu school. I think they're carrying me out in a stretcher with my legs broken and my arms broken. For sure.
Do you think you would put up a fight against them, or do you think it would just be over like that?
I think if it remained standing, I'd have a prayer, but the moment it went to the ground, it'd be over with. So that's a good question.
Yeah. So I would like to start off this interview by knowing a little bit more about your comic book history. So can you talk to me about how you got into comic books, and also at what point in your life did you decide that you were going to take the leap to work on comic books?
Well, when I was 14 years old, there was a book called Marvel Comics tryout book, and they had printed pages in there where you could ink them. There's some pages where they just give you a comic book script and you can draw them out. There's coloring, samples, and lettering. And I sent my stuff into Marvel, and they had a submissions editor, and the guy actually wrote back saying, "Oh, we'd love to have you in a few years or soon." And they sent me information about their insurance plan, and I showed my parents, and I was like, "This is a real job. I could be doing this," and it's great money. And so I was hooked at age 14. I don't think they realized I was a kid, but by the time I made it to Marvel, years and years later, that submissions editor was now editing a book called Quasar that Greg Capullo started on, who later went on to Spawn and now Batman, and in his own comic books. But he remembered me. He remembered my samples, and I had sent up a follow-up illustration of Spider-Man, and Spider-Man was saying thank you to this editor whose name was Len Kaminsky. And he hired me right away, and so did a few other editors. Do like intro jobs, like backup stories that I was inking. So yeah, it was very exciting, and I always loved comic books. And my dad was an artist, so he wanted to be a comic book artist. He was an advertising guy.
Well, that's an awesome story. Were you expecting him to write back to you when you were just a kid?
I don't know what I was expecting, honestly, because I'd never done anything like that before. But I was very, very happy. I could tell it wasn't just a form letter; it was a personal letter. So that kind of made me excited, and I knew that I had seen like a lot of professionals. I didn't have the internet when I was a kid, but in magazines and magazines about comic books, they would show their rejection letters, and they just look like, "Thank you for sending in your samples. We're not hiring at this time. Good luck." So I knew it was a little bit more than that. So that kind of made me proud and excited.
Yeah, that's like me trying to get interviews. I reach out to a ton of different people, and I never hear back. I hear back once in a while. Like, I reached out to you. I wasn't sure if you were going to respond, but I got a response, and I can't believe you responded back to me, and I'm super happy to be doing this interview.
Yeah, I mean, comic book artists and writers are a little flaky, you're going to find out, but they all like the attention. So ultimately, I think you'll have them in your grasp.
Nice. Now, I want to know if you had the chance ever to meet Stan Lee when you were like getting into working with Marvel.
I didn't meet him until I was already working at Marvel, and he would be at conventions, and the conventions were not quite as big. I mean, San Diego Comic-Con, which is a huge convention, and the New York Comic-Con were going on, but they weren't as big as they were now. So it wasn't uncommon to just hang out with the other comic book professionals like Stan Lee. And so after the convention, we'd go out and have dinner and hang out and chit chat. So he's very, very entertaining. It was, he's a celebrity. He's been, you know, he's quite the creator. I mean, he's changed the whole world with his creations.
Yeah. Do you have any cool stories about you and Stan Lee together?
I did an interview with him at his office one time. I was There was a show host who had a television show who asked him to create her as a comic book character, and I was going to draw it based on his feedback. And it just, I mean, I don't know, I don't remember exactly. I just remember him giving me such a hard time the entire time, just ribbing me and poking me and pestering me like basically like we're the same age. Meanwhile, he was like 93 years old, and he had more energy than anybody else in the room. So
Yeah.
he's quite a character, probably his whole life.
Everyone knows Stan Lee and how awesome of a person he was, and everyone wishes they had a chance to get him and meet him. But you had the chance to meet him, so that must be absolutely awesome. Uh, but the next thing that I would like to discuss with you is the show that you're a part of, which is called the Original Drink and Draw Show. And that's a show where you and other artists get together for an hour and a half ish, and you bring on other artists and you draw together about what they've worked on or in their style, depending on what you want to do. Now, I am a huge fan of that show, but come to find out, before you came up with the idea for this, I had no idea that you and Jeff Johnson were undercover cops before.
Yeah, I used to get that all the time. I think it's the haircut, maybe. I don't know. But Jeff has this really, really super short hair, and I guess we look like two TV cops or something. I think real cops look the walk. But it was drink and draw was a lot of fun. We just started as a bunch of guys, like maybe 3, 4 guys hanging out, and now there's drink and draw chapters all around the world. Like there's anywhere you go that there's artists, you'll find a drink and draw chapter somewhere if you go on Facebook and find that group and see where they hang out. A little difficult right now considering the time, but
Yeah.
yeah, it really turned it into something we're real proud of it. And it started in Los Angeles, I think in 2005.
How did you get Joe Casada to come on?
Joe and I inked Joe's very first comic book work at DC, so we were friends way, way back before he exploded and became the Joe Casada we know and some of us love today. But we've been friends for most of my life. We used to hang out and visit Miami together, and he lived in New York. I lived in New York for a little while. But as you can tell from watching that show, gives me a hard time. It seems like everybody gives me a hard time, but he really relishes in it.
Well, I heard you say that everyone gives you a hard time. I don't know if that's the truest thing in the world, because everyone gives Jeff Johnson a hard time.
That is true. Jeff gets the beat down constantly. But you know what? Jeff is one of those guys where it's like, water on a duck's back. It just rolls right off. He does not, I always try to get a rise out of him and nothing works, but I keep trying.
Now, can you tell me whose idea it was to start the Original Drink and Draw Show?
It was my idea to start the show. I just think that that's the way, like a live stream like yours or a YouTube show really reaches a lot of people. And back to your point about Stan Lee, there's very few comic book people where like you instantaneously know them from comic books. Like when you think of comic book celebrities, you think of Stan Lee, you might think of perhaps Kevin Smith or Jim Lee because their face is always in the media, and there weren't too many comic book professionals putting themselves out there. So I wanted Drink and Draw to be kind of a conduit for comic book artists to be able to show their face and maybe fans to go, oh, well, this person has this sort of personality, or I kind of resonate with that person. So hopefully it helps. Or I don't know. Drink and Draw is a weird show, so it could be the downfall of comics. Who knows?
Well, I think it's a really great show. I look forward to every episode that comes out, listening to you guys talk back and forth, and I really get to see how you guys draw, and I think it's a really cool idea that you came up with this.
Oh, thanks very much. It was kind of a mutual thing to come up with Drink and Draw itself, mostly spearheaded by Dave, who wanted to hang out with his his buddies that were all married and a way to drag them out of the house. And at least we came back with drawings as opposed to, nothing and just a worthless evening out. So we owe a lot of thanks to the Godfather. We call him the Godfather of Drink and Draw, Dave Johnson.
Now, is everyone that's on it now, were they originally on it from the beginning?
Well, Joe's been to a few drink and draws, but only within like maybe the past 5 years or so. It was basically Dave, myself, Jeff Johnson were the three that started it, and then there was just a handful of people that just kept growing and growing in the Los Angeles art scene. Not all of them being comic book artists, some of them being animation artists, because there's a lot of animation out here. All the studios, for the most part, are in Los Angeles, and then there's a lot of storyboard, like movie storyboard artists and commercial storyboard artists and toy designers. So it was a good amalgamation of a lot of different art types that had something similar in common, which was kind of their love for maybe the comic book medium.
Now, moving into another gear, your comic that just came to an end was titled An Unkindness of Ravens, which just ended at issue number 5. Now, back to when issue number 1 came out, it absolutely destroyed Jeff Johnson's book. And man, let me tell you that I really liked the artwork on the inside. I love the variant covers. You got a French artist to do some of the variants, Jenny Frison.
Frison. Yeah, Boom really came through, and we got amazing artists. And you'll notice we didn't get Jeff on there, but yeah, I was impressed. Some of those covers, they're putting together the trade paperback, and I was like, I think maybe you should use their artwork, like Jenny's. There's another woman, Q. She goes by the name Q on there, not like QAnon or anything, but Quisson or something like that. I'm butchering her name, but it's a really cool sounding. It almost sounds like a superhero name. But she did amazing variant covers. Those were really cool.
The variants were awesome. The art, like I said, was awesome, and I guess the story was okay. But all jokes aside, I really did like this series. So can you tell me how you came up with the idea for this whole comic book, and how do you think the series did as a whole?
I hear the series did really well from Boom. They really liked it. I think it overperformed where they thought it would. As far as where I came up with it, I loved movies like The Omen and kind of those like Rosemary's Baby, classic horror movies, and I wanted to create. There's just so much you can do with the lore around the Salem witch trials, and wondering what happened to those people that had escaped, and the story kind of formed itself mostly. I mean, you'll hear a lot of writers, and they'll say that the characters kind of write the story, or the story writes itself, and I think that's true when you have something that you're really interested in or into, and you can feel those characters and feel that situation. You're just basically, in my case, typing instead of writing the story down. But it was very fun. It's a lot different from the comic book slots that I wrote and drew.
When this was when you were getting all this ready to come out with issue number 1, what was it like for you? Like, how were you feeling when issue number 1 was about to hit the shelves?
It felt as exciting as it did when I first saw my very first work when I was still in high school come out on the shelves. I just couldn't, you see it there, and I didn't do a whole lot of the artwork inside Unkindness of Ravens. I did like little tiny excerpts in the front and in the back, but it just felt different to be just the writer in this case.
How do you think it was going to do when it first came out? Like, how do you think people would react to it?
I didn't know. It's hard to say. Like, there's obviously a big following for the supernatural, like witches and werewolves and vampires. So I know the market is there, but in some cases it can be a little oversaturated at times. So I thought, if it sells even 7,000 copies, I'd be excited. But the first issue got sold out, and went into second printing, and I think even the second issue might have gone into the second printing. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. But it did really, really well, and people liked it, and the reviews were kind for the most part, which makes me happy.
I really liked it. Everyone kept saying that it was only 4 issues, and I kept telling everyone that there's one more, because I was really looking forward to the last issue that just came out this week. I really loved it. I tried to collect all the variants that came out. I only got 2 though. I got issues 1 and 2 for the variants, but I'm still happy with that. I can try and go out and get the other 3 variants to go along with it. But continuing on your comic book, I would like to know if you plan on making a volume 2 for this, and if you don't plan on making a volume 2, are you going to work on another comic book series like writing or art?
Well, I got a few comic books in the works where in one case, I'm working with a very popular comic book creator, and I'm just drawing it. But as far as working with Boom again, I'm developing a new series over there. I don't know who the artist is going to be. They usually pick the artist based on what the book is about. And since they haven't approved the book yet, I can't really speak to that. But there's a few things. I did a graphic novel in China that's going to first come out in China, and they'll redo it in Europe, and then obviously here somewhere in America. But there's a lot of different projects.
Yeah.
A lot of Marvel stuff. I just did some stuff for Conan, which I'm excited about. But I can't. You know what? Maybe I'll come on your show when I can announce the secret new project with this. I was going to say top 5 writer, but I would say he's a top 2 writer in the comic book business. So
Wow.
lucky to be working with them, and
That's going to be awesome.
hopefully will like my latest idea.
Now you brought up something that I wanted to ask about. You said that like the company will choose the artist for you. So is that for like every company where they give you the artist, or do you ever get to choose the artist you want to work with, or how does that work?
Well, in this case, like with Ravens, I brought them a bunch of artists to look at, and they brought a bunch of artists for me to look at, and it was ultimately my choice on who to pick. But they had some strong, suggestions. So there was one woman who was going to draw it, and I was kind of excited about that. But then they showed me another artist, and they basically picked the artist which suits the material the best. And that's their business. That's how they make money. So I generally side with their suggestions.
Now, Dan, before we leave, I just wanted to say that the reason I am doing this whole interview series is because I want to motivate younger people that may not be the most popular kid in school, and I want to motivate younger people that may be stuck and not sure what to do. I have multiple outlets myself for not being that popular in school to get my mind off of all that stuff. I go to the gym, I do wrestling and jiu-jitsu, and I have this YouTube channel, and all these things help me a lot. But I think all these younger people want to hear from you, someone who made it in their career doing something many people wish to be doing. So, Dan, my question to you is, what advice do you have for these people that want to go somewhere in life but aren't sure what to do right now?
Well, I'm kind of like you. I was, I wasn't like a big muscle guy in school or anything. So um, I took a lot of like martial arts classes, and but I was also very into comic books. But luckily now comic books are much more popular. It's not like a nerd thing, even though like a nerd is like a nice word now. It wasn't such a nice word when I was growing up. But um, I think what really helped me is I always had a goal in mind. And I know like a lot of kids my age, when I was first interested in comic books and maybe as a career, they hadn't quite decided yet. Every kid who ever plays a sport says, I'm going to be, a football star, or I'll play for the NFL, or, that's probably, a little tougher to do than dedicate yourself to something that you can see results in. So my advice would be find legitimately what you really, really love. And maybe it is football, but just keep at it every day and keep doing that. Keep learning more about it, study it. And always, this is the best advice I ever got, was compare yourself to the best. Even if you're just starting out, go, how would that person approach this same challenge? Whether it's, say, the martial arts, like how would Israel Adesanya, how's he going to beat Paulo Costa? I don't know if you saw that fight, but Paulo Costa is this terrifying guy who's just running through everybody in his division. Looks like a superhero and a monster, and Israel Adesanya is a little bit on the thin side. Like if you see that guy at the beach, you wouldn't be intimidated by him in the least. Whereas you see Paulo, and the guy looks like back off. It's the Incredible Hulk. But that guy had a great game plan. He was a great martial artist. So you might say, how would a guy like that approach this, or how would an artist approach this page if he had this script? How would he show that action? And similar to like, how would a writer? I have this great idea of my favorite writer, Ed Brubaker. How would he tell this story? And then once you do your version of it, see how it stacks up with how you imagine that hero of yours would do it. And you'll be able to see like, oh, well, this would probably be different. And then just keep trying to level up. The good news is there's always going to be somebody better. And most people think that's bad news, but the good news is there's always somebody better doing something a little different. They have a different way to learn. And, we're lucky enough we can adopt that and add that and get to where we want to be. It sounds like you're already doing great. I'm already envious of your setup. Now the drinking draw guys are going to see this, and they're all going to want to change their studios so it looks professional. You're doing a great job already.
Now, going back to when you were talking about how we were nerds when we were kids, I'm like the only kid in my whole school that reads comic books, and I'm trying to get like more kids reading comic books. And like, I wish like I could go to school and talk to kids about new comic book day and books that are coming out, but I don't think they have any interest in comic books, and I'm trying to make them realize how awesome comic books are and showing them like how cool the stories can be. There's everything, like there's at least a comic book that's just for you, but I don't think they're clicking to it. And I think I'm one of the lucky kids that got turned on to comic books and is able to explore this whole world of awesomeness.
Yeah, and this channel is going to help get your name out there, and you're going to get more and more confident every interview, and every time you're on, it's going to be easier and easier. Like for me, I was very nervous with the first one. My wife's an actress, so she would critique every single time I was interviewed. So hopefully, hopefully I'm doing better than a year ago from the original Drink and Draw interviews or live streams. And you will too. And you know what? Some people may never like comic books, and that's okay. But if you can get just a few people into it, they'll probably appreciate it and remember it was you, Will the Beast, that got them into it in the first place.
Now, going back to like a year ago, when I was like, I started doing these hour-long interview shows. They were called the Sunday Sit Downs. I'd do them like every Sunday, and they would either go from like an hour to an hour and a half. And I had Ryan Stegman on the show, and when he came on, or before he came on, I was freaking out. I was like walking around. I was laying on the ground. My heart was pounding because it was the first like big comic book person that I'll be able to talk to in person, or not in person, but like face to face. And I was just freaking out. I was so nervous, but the interview ended up going very well. And then when I interviewed Scotty Young, it was kind of like the same thing, but not as bad. But I think being nervous just means you care about it. So I was nervous for this one. I wasn't as nervous. I was just sitting here, just trying to stay calm. And right when I saw you on, I'm like, there's that background I see every time on the original Drink and Draw.
That's nice, comforting. You got lucky because Ryan and Scotty are both very easy guys to talk to and a lot of fun.
Now, I wanted to bring this up. I don't know if it's anything possible, but when I talked to Scotty Young, he was like, give me a list of everyone that you want to interview. So I gave him a list. You were on there. Joe Casada was on there, and he says, those are all easy gets. This was last year in July. And he says that, and he said like last July, he said that Joe Casada was willing to come on to the show, and I haven't heard anything since. So I was wondering if you could nudge Joe in the right direction to come on this interview show.
I think I can do that for you. I'll tell him how well it went.
Nice. Thanks, Dan.
You got it.
I just really wanted to say thank you for doing this. This was absolutely awesome. I had no idea if you were going to do this, but I can't thank you enough. I had a great time sitting down with you and learning more about you.
Likewise. Thanks for having me on, Will, and best of luck for the future ones. And I think you got a great show on your hands. Congratulations.
Thank you. It was a pleasure having you on. I still can't believe that you wanted to come on the show, and I can't thank you enough.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it, Will.
There you have it, Hero Squad. 5 Questions with the Beast, Episode 1, featuring special guest Dan Panosian. I had such a great time sitting down with Dan. He really is a great person, and he has a great personality. I hope you all enjoyed this as much as I did. This was absolutely a blast. I had so much fun hearing his story. Now, before you all leave, hit the subscribe, hit the like, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any more of our upcoming content and these awesome interviews. With all that being said, we'll catch you in the next episodes of 5 Questions with the Beast. I had a blast. This was a lot of fun. So, thank you again for doing this.
Oh, you got it. All right, I'll put the word out. Let me know when the episode's up. Okay.
All right, we'll let you know.
All right. Cheers, you guys. Nice meeting both of you.
See you
Bye,
later.
Sean. Bye, Will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.